that's the important thing about therapy. Understanding where what you're dealing with comes from, what the origins are, it helps you navigate yourself or helps you understand your emotions a little bit better, helps you be able to navigate different situations and different relationships and just understand what's causing the anxiety or the trauma. And that's where I am in life. I'm just like my focus in 2025 is to actively reduce stress and do things that make me happy. And you'll be surprised. You will literally be surprised. And this is probably something you guys need to just ask yourself, ask your friends, do you know what makes you happy? Do you literally know what are the things that make you happy? What are the things that release dopamine inside of your body? And most people don't know.
Welcome to Bailey and Buck Unplugged, where we talk about sports, entertainment, and mental health in support of the Kennedy Kids Foundation. If you're struggling with mental health, we encourage you to speak up and get help. A great place to start is 988. That's the free crisis prevention lifeline. Or you can check out the resources tab at kennedykids.org. If you are in an absolute emergency, please dial 911. Either way, we want you to know that you are not alone and that you don't have to struggle, and speak up, get help. There are resources available to you, and we are here to support you. If you're new around here, I want to introduce you to our host. I am Misty Buck. I am an author and a mental health and performance coach. And my co-hosts are Robert Bailey. He is the president of Rosenhaus Sports, the president of Kennedy Kids Foundation. He's a two-time Super Bowl champion, two-time college national champion. He's an NFL record holder, and he's an ESPY winner. And we are also joined by Bailey Brooks Masburn. She is a celebrity wedding and event planner, a former NFL cheerleader, and the executive director of the Kennedy Kids Foundation.
All right, on today's episode of Bailey and Buck Unplugged, we have Omar Kelly, sports journalist and podcast host. He has been in sports media for over 25 years now, specializing in our hometown team. You know my favorites, the Miami Dolphins, and of course, he works with the Miami Herald, the Florida Sun Sentinel, and Sports Illustrated. Would you please help me welcome Omar Kelly? Welcome to the show today, Omar. Thanks for being with us. Oh, you're so welcome. We're so happy you could join us. And so we always like to start our show out with our very first question, which is, at what point in time in your career, your 25-year career, congratulations, by the way, I know you've paid.
That's a long time, Omar.
Very long time. But at what point would you look back on there and say that you had to struggle with mental health?
I don't think there's any point throughout my career where I don't think I had to struggle with mental health. I think the first time I discovered it was an issue was to get into the sports industry, I had to take a semester from college off to go join the Palm Beach Post and do a spring internship there. And in the spring, I I lived in a home with a wealthy lady, and it was like a side house. Had access to the kitchen, but it was an older woman, didn't really have anybody to talk to, didn't have any other interns around, had some coworkers, but they weren't my age. And there was just a huge period of isolation for probably about 4 of the 6 months. And
Wow.
at that point, that's before social media, but I'm not even sure if cell phones were around at that time. There was just so much isolation that I realized, hey man, it's important that you need to talk to somebody, especially with what you've got going on. And I was so young, I really hadn't discovered myself, and I'm still trying to discover myself. I think everybody evolves and changes, and you got to really learn yourself and understand yourself and become comfortable with that.
That's
So what was
amazing.
the struggle that you were dealing with? Was the isolation itself?
Isolation. Um, I have always, if I'm being transparent, and that's what the show is about, I
Yes,
have
please join us in
always
the transparency. Yeah.
struggled with being comfortable being alone and being comfortable being quiet. And people rarely ever understand this. When you are at home generally and work alone, nobody to talk to, no office space, no water cooler to go to. You're generally in silence, in quiet.
Right.
So when people would come home, like my kids or my ex-wives or whoever I'm dating, I'm like that puppy, like, like, yeah, I need interaction. I want to talk to people, and or I want to do something, and it just creates a great sense of isolation. And I had always not really been comfortable with that isolation. I'd not been comfortable with being in my own space, and I'm still struggling with it from time to time. I have a young daughter right now, who's 4, and she's figuring out herself. She's developing her own, personality. But right now, I've got joint custody with her mom, and when she's with me, it's daddy, daddy, daddy. It's daddy activities. It's very clingy. It's very, she wants affection, and those are all great things. And this is what a daughter needs from a father. But then on the flip side, when I don't have her, it's isolation, and I'm actually getting okay with that. I'm like, at that point, I'm so, touched out, and so, having to be so hands-on. It's great to turn off the switch. So I am 40. I just turned 48 last month, and I am just getting to the point where I'm comfortable being by myself.
Wow.
Wow.
Are there any specific tools that you develop to like deal with the when you're in your own period of solitude? Like, are there any tools that you use to get through it? Do you fill it with something? Like, how have you I know it sounds funny, but how have you
No, yeah, I fill it
what's
with
your coping
relationships, which
technique?
is a
Yeah.
bad thing
Yes.
generally.
Yes. Oh, we've all
Um,
done that before. Don't, yeah,
yeah,
everybody's filled it with a relationship.
yes. And I'm learning not to keep placeholders. I'm learning, it's okay to be by yourself. That is a to this day real journey that I'm on. I'm going through. Whereas I don't need a girlfriend. I don't need to be in a relationship. I also realize I most of my life I've been in relationships, whether it's a girlfriend or a marriage. Sometimes it's just okay to casually date and not take everything so serious. So these are all things that, in fact, that I've dealt with a therapist in 2025 about, and just having people and friends and a therapist to talk to. Now everybody's encouraging me and others to talk to ChatGPT. I'm not necessarily certain how I feel about that, but people swear ChatGPT is such a great therapist. And
Really? This is
oh
the first time I'm
yeah,
hearing that. Wow.
I have discovered more people use ChatGPT for therapy and life guidance, life coaching, analyzation of relationships than they actually do to find out information.
Oh
And
my
this
gosh.
is this is this is like no, and people have shared with me some of the things they I have a friend that she turns in every text from a relationship into the chat GBT, and the chat GBT will send her like 2 pages of analysis about what's going on in the relationship.
Oh my.
And it's some good stuff. And in fact, I have a son who's dealt with some, I don't want to tell his business, but he's finally admitted that he was depressed. And I said, hey, if you don't want to go to a therapist, and this is the state that we're in, he's not there yet.
Right.
Despite, and I don't think until you're there, you can't force anybody to be
You
there.
can't force them.
And I'm like, if you don't want to talk to a person about it, okay. I don't feel comfortable telling a computer, because I think the more you feed a computer, the one day the computer revolution is going to happen, and then they're going to be like, we got all this information. This is how we manipulate Omar.
Yeah.
But if you don't feel comfortable talking to somebody, and especially young kids in this generation,
Yeah.
they on that chat GBT and information, computer, they are on it. So hey, maybe that might be the route for you.
It's
I don't want to
incredible.
admit this. It's shame. It's I think it's kind of shameful. I'm kind of Omar, I'm 49 on the first. So we're in the same age bracket. And it does seem very crazy to me that I would talk to my chat GBT or my computer. And like I remember 25 years ago when you said that, I was like, did I have a cell phone then? Like, I don't think so, And so I did this though, Robert. Like the other day, I had an issue with with my partner, and I was worried about how I wanted to frame the response to something that they text to me and the situation we were in the middle of. And because I didn't trust myself, I needed to find a way to remove the emotion because, women were emotional. And so we'd be like super heightened on the
That's
response.
wonderful awareness about yourself.
Shut up,
And I think
Omar.
that's a great starting point.
So I literally put the situation into my ChatGPT and asked it how I should
What?
respond. I hope he does not watch this episode. Like, please, nobody tell him. But I put the situation into my ChatGPT and it spit out 3 suggested responses that would not like inflate the argument. And so in turn, instead of picking one of the 3, I took all 3 and mushed them together and sent the response. And he goes, "Okay, I understand. Thank you for that response." And I was like, "Oh my God, I
Wow.
think this worked."
So,
Like,
right. So it didn't escalate.
correct. It didn't escalate, and he heard what I was trying to say. He understood because my prompt I'm not going to tell you what the prompt was, but like my prompt was very detailed and specific about who I was talking to, what the situation was, and how I wanted to be heard. And it told me what to do. And then it gave me like a list of questions that I should ask myself about what I wanted for the outcome of the situation before I proceeded. And then it said, if his response is negative, it gave me solutions for how to deal with the negative response as well. And I was
Wow.
like, shut the front door. Did ChatGPT just walk me through this? Like,
Yeah.
therapists are going to be like, I don't know, man. What Omar said is like legit though.
It's funny because the first person who actually recommended that I kind of not take a very hands-off approach to ChatGPT was my actual therapist. And he was like, it can help you in so many different regards, especially and not just in emotions and therapy, but actual work. And that was literally the first person my best friend has also recommended to me. I have a close friend who I think I have probably 3 close friends who have used it for therapeutic purposes
Wow.
and as a sounding board
This
for
is my first time hearing about Chat GPT being a therapist. I put stuff in Chat GPT in terms of like, man, my side is hurting and it's an acute, it's just strong pain and what do you think it is? And it always gives me, oh, I'm not a doctor, I can't, or this or this, but you should check with your doctor. And I'm like, okay, I'm done with this Chat GPT. But for therapy, this is the first time, Omar, out of all the people we've interviewed, Brian McKnight, Terry Crews, a bunch of different celebrities, and you're the first one that recommended using ChatGPT. And it's just to me, it's just really evident of where we are going now that mental health is becoming such a talked about subject.
yeah.
You talked about, you know, 25 years ago what you went through, and now you have a therapist. Um, what usually is something that men, especially men, that
Yes.
we don't want to get a
The
therapist.
stigma.
When did you get a therapist, and like what year was that, and
Um,
what made you say to yourself, I got to go get a therapist?
you know what? A lot of it is a stigma of the African American culture,
Yes,
the stigma of the church community,
yes,
the stigma of men and masculinity. And we should not talk about our feelings and what we're going through and our challenges. I think I have therapy probably has been in my life for the majority of my adult life, starting with probably my first marriage, couples therapy, couples therapy from a pre-marriage therapy. I forget
right.
what you call it, like
Premarital counseling.
premarital counseling. Um, Used it in both marriages. Uh,
And I guess it didn't work. Uh,
no, 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 not necessarily, not necessarily. I think therapy is it has to be welcomed and embraced in both
Right,
from both sides,
right.
especially when it's a couples thing. And I don't necessarily feel like it probably was in both sides. And I'm sure I'm not perfect, so I'm sure I take responsibility for a lot. A lot of times, especially in relationships, um, when it comes to therapy, my partners always don't like their experience because I'm an effective communicator, and they always feel like the therapist is
Like you're gonna win. You're gonna
that's
win.
not yet the therapist. And that might be a me as a communicator. That might be a woman not taking accountability. It could be a whole lot of things. But I can, because I effectively communicate my thoughts and emotions and feelings on paper all the time and orally, it's easier for me. And they don't see it as a struggle, and they think that I'm winning.
Yeah, yeah.
And
They use
that
that in therapy, winning.
Yeah, and I don't view anything as there's a winner or loser. There's just me effectively communicating how I feel and what you've done or what we're experiencing, how it affects me. And I don't think also women are comfortable with a man who is in tune with his emotions and can always or consistently effectively communicate. We're supposed to shut down. And there's so many women who will say, "Oh, I want a man who can communicate." But then when he does communicate, oh, he's always talking. He's like a woman. He always wants to
Right.
talk about things or talk about situations, and it's like a woman. And and then they take on this masculine role where it's like, "Oh, I don't want to talk about it." Okay, if you and that has been so many in so many areas. The one thing, and I don't want this to sound like a man woman battle debate, but and I've discovered this in a lot of podcasts that I've worked on, that I've done. Women are very uncomfortable with men talking about their feelings, emotions, thoughts on relationships, likes, dislikes regarding women on podcasts, because we're just supposed to mind our own business and stay in our own lane and talk about our own issues. And I remember I was having a conversation with because I'm in the podcast space and I create podcasts and things of that nature. And one of the podcasts that I want to work on is um, single fathers. I don't think that we have a safe space, or men going through divorce. There is not a safe space. Like when I went through my divorce, I felt like I was alone in the world. There was absolutely nobody I could talk to, nobody who was going through what I was going through. When I had my son, and I was going through those emotional battles that he was going through, there was absolutely nobody I could talk to. But in hindsight, what I realized after my experience, and because I shared my experience, multiple men. I have a friend, a young man that I befriended years ago, who got into a relationship, had a child with a mother. The child is young. He decided the relationship wasn't working. They needed to split apart. And it was hard on him because he's going to miss the family unit, but he needed somebody to talk to who had been there before,
Right.
and decided to talk to me about it. And that's what's happened. I don't think we give men a safe space to talk about emotional things like divorce, co-parenting, um, just anything that we got. I don't even think we in a community, especially in the African American community, we don't even feel comfortable talking about finances and money and
Right.
investments and like and that's not a healthy place for us. We especially men, I think women will talk amongst themselves. Men, we bottle it up and we just want to talk about music and cars and stuff like that. But I have a group of male friends where we talk about what we're feeling, what we're going through, our dating experiences, what our emotions are. And I personally think it's helpful that it's this podcast era where we're seeing other guys and seeing other podcast spaces where men and women are effectively talking about dating and relationships and courtships and marriage and pros and cons of this and that. I think that those are healthy. Now, it would be great if more therapists were involved, and I think some are, but not all of it is constructive. But it gets us communicating, and I think that's a starting point.
Well, I have to chime in here before the women all crucify me for not speaking up for us because you said some stuff, but I'm not gonna come at you. That's not what's happening right now. Omar, I don't want you to feel like that's what I've
Please chime
said
in.
enough,
Yes.
but I just would like to say it's not, I think there is a point in time where we all have to stop saying it's women or it's men. It's really the women that you've experienced that don't want to hear what you have to say and communicate with you. Because a lot of women do want men who are in touch with their emotions and are able to communicate and are great communicators and are willing to share. A lot
Are
of
you
us
one of
love
those?
that.
Are
Oh,
you one of those?
I'm definitely one of those. I spend at least 4 to 5 hours a day since the day I met my husband speaking to him. And when I first met him, he would stay on the phone with me for 10 hours at minimum for the day if he wasn't going to see me. So that's why after 3 weeks, like both of us were like, this is ridiculous. Let's just move in at this point. Let's figure it out as we go along. But we still communicate 4 to 5 hours a day. Like every day at about 9:30, I'm in that war room with him till 12:30. We have a thing we call the library. And I love how intuitive he is and how much he's willing to share. What I think for men, what you touched on is men aren't providing safe spaces for other men to speak. And women have been doing this for each other
Yes.
for years. And so if you're the type of guy that needs to speak, to the men that you want to share with and go through your experience with. Because my husband was a single father when I met him. He has full custody of both his kids when I moved in. And, I got to be a mom to these two extra bonus children that I consider my own. And they literally, he's an excellent communicator, but he felt like he was speaking to too many men. And he wanted to find a female voice to start talking to have a safe space to share what he was going through and to get more female input because he was getting too much male input. And he was like, I don't have an issue with men, though. I had an issue with my ex, and I want to figure out how to move past that. And I want a woman's opinion of my experience in that situation with her. And so for you getting into a male group with a bunch of guys who are providing a safe space for you to share your emotions is what more men need from their own gender to be able to talk and bounce things off of, like being a single father, like what you were talking about. Because I do think it's rare that you do that, but women have always done that. But don't get me wrong, not all women want to hear about our emotional BS. And so I just get rid of those women and I find the tribe that I want to hang out with. And so that's what we all naturally do. And we're able to naturally filter through the people that are good for us and safe spaces versus just still looking, or where you come from, Omar, is isolation and not being able to be alone in the beginning. And a lot of women suffer from that as well. My husband loves being isolated because he was an only child. So he grew up like that. That was normal to him. But I'm
Yeah.
one of six. So that was not normal to me. So anytime I had to be isolated, I was like always looking for like, oh my gosh, I have to fill it with something because I can't just sit and be idle and be by myself. So I align with what you're saying and what you're struggling with. I just want to change the vernacular a little bit because it's not a woman thing. It's not all of us. It's just the ones that you are dealing with, the circle you're swimming in. You need the pond to jump into the pond with the women who are great communicators and love men who can express themselves and share like all their ideas and then understand what the heck we're saying, which is also a skill if you're an excellent communicator, which I can already tell that you are, but obviously you've got a long history of communicating to the masses.
Bailey, is that something that you talk about early in the process when you meet someone, right? Is that like, are we at the point now in our lives, generation, whatever you want to call it, where now that mental health is talked about so much, is it should it be one of the first few topics you talk about when you first meet somebody?
I
Absolutely.
love this question. Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I
yeah.
think two things that are important to me, and two things that are important to me is in dating, courtship, relationships is one, I can't be with a person who cannot effectively communicate. And it's not just a matter of communicating, but you also have to know how to listen. Um, Also have to be able to be accountable to whatever situation. Like that's one of the major issues because of things that I've been through. Accountability is huge for me. But also, you need to know your love language. You need to know how you give and how you receive love. That's critical to me. I just learned this year about attachment styles. And I have an anxious attachment style, and so whenever people begin to scale back, I take that as like, oh, well, it's you're going to abandon. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that, but if you don't know what your attachment style, you don't know what you're dealing with, or it's important for that person to know how you react to things. So,
What's the attachment style? Like, break that down. I've never heard of
Okay.
um,
it.
So one like trauma bonding is an attachment style. So some people bond and get in relationships with each other because they're aligned with the trauma.
The same trauma.
Like so if we're talking about we both have the same trauma and I share it with you and you're like, oh, me too, blah, blah,
yeah.
blah, blah. And so you start bonding over this trauma bond, but you don't actually talk about how the trauma impacts you. So initially you bond over this trauma,
But
but then
then that same trauma
eventually
could be the reason you divorce or break
correct,
up.
because you're not actually talking about how it triggers you or how not to trigger the other person
Yeah.
or like and you're not both respecting it even though you know the information.
Mhm.
So that's an example of an attachment style. So he has an anxious attachment style. That's a new one for me. Please share a little bit more how that one works.
I'm honestly still researching. I don't want to like tell people like anytime I have to like I feel something going, I have to look it up and read it again and watch videos and understand it. But there are a lot of things that emotionally just make me anxious. And anxiety is not a comfortable place for anybody, but particularly me. I'm not a naturally anxious person. So if I'm in a relationship where somebody makes me anxious, I know that I'm prone to run. And
So
that's
I pulled up the definition, and that's funny you said prone to run because it says it's an insecure attachment style that's characterized by a strong desire for meaningful relationships.
yes.
And it has a fear of abandonment and rejection and a high need for reassurance and support. So that means that if Omar knows himself and he knows that about himself and he's with somebody who makes him feel even more rejected, it's going to be like a disastrous experience for him in
Right.
the relationship. So somebody with him would need to understand that his love language is words of affirmation. Am I right?
Actually, it's physical touch, but
No, but there's two. Everybody
okay.
that has a love language, you typically two
I am
higher
physical
needing
touch
one.
and acts of service.
Oh, acts of service. Okay,
Yes.
so I would think the high need for reassurance and support would translate
Yeah,
into
I'm not.
words of
I'm
affirmation.
actually not in a high, but you have to reassure me that I'm safe. And there's a safety for me is a major thing from the standpoint, and this is deep here, but since we're talking about emotional stuff, um, abandonment, a lot of abandonment from people that I love, not my parents, but then, it's just a lot of abandonment. So I've always struggled with that. And so I feel like people abandon me a lot. I feel like a lot of people do not love me unconditionally. They love me based on conditions. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this world. A lot of people feel that way. Like it started probably from childhood where I felt like even my parents, we had to excel in my house to we did not get affection, which is where my love language comes in. My parents had their own issues and their own trauma, and they're Jamaican, and I think you're Jamaican too, Robert. No?
Yeah, my mother's Jamaican. I was born in Barbados, but my background is Jamaican.
Yes. And Caribbean people are not huggy, feely, kissy, touchy, lovey.
100%. Right.
My mom's
100%.
And
Trinidadian. She was not a hugger. She actually
No,
tell you right now that she'll be like this. I'm the child that taught her what love meant, like how to love. She'll tell you.
and that, I talk about it even with my parents. If to this day, if I physically go to hug my parents, my dad and my mom, and I will physically go to hug them because
Right.
they have to,
You
I
you
know that
understand. You're at the point where you like, I'm gonna do this.
I'm going to do this because this is part of your trauma.
Right.
And you have to get past it because we have to break these generational curses. And I feel like as my son who's now 23, I feel like I didn't hug him enough. And so now with my daughter, it's total. You want affection, let's get it. Let's come. You want to, and she will say to me on a regular basis, Daddy, I want to cuddle. Let's cuddle. Like, it's and that's just, I think everybody is wired differently and everybody has different needs. And, when you don't get one thing, then it makes something else become more heightened. And so and that's from what the origins are, it helps you navigate yourself or helps you understand your emotions a little bit better, helps you be able to navigate different situations and different relationships and just understand what's causing the anxiety or the trauma. And that's where I am in life. I'm just like, my focus in 2025 is to actively reduce stress and do things that make me happy. And you'll be surprised. You will literally be surprised. And this is probably something you guys need to just ask yourself, ask your friends, do you know what makes you happy? Do you literally know what are the things that make you happy? What are the things that release dopamine inside of your body? And most people don't know. Most people don't, they know the feeling, they have absolutely no idea sometimes how to trigger that feeling.
Robert, do you know what makes you happy?
Uh, for me, I think what makes me happy is um setting a goal and achieving that goal. Success. That to me, that's for me. Obviously,
Hold on. I hear you. But if I said, Robert, I need you before 7 o'clock tonight to make yourself happy today, like make yourself feel elated, what would you do?
what would I do? I would probably try to go play a sport, paddle, pickle, to create a competitive atmosphere for me. That makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And winning in that atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Okay.
get to win.
That was what was like taught to me my whole life, right? From a little kid in Little League. And it's
You're an
always
athlete, you're a
about
competitor.
the
Goal
competitive
oriented
nature.
drives you.
Right.
Goal oriented drives you. Competing, winning. It releases a dopamine.
It
You've trained
releases a
yourself
dopamine for a
from your
hundred percent.
from you were 8 years old. You've trained yourself.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I'm like you. I don't like loneliness. I don't like isolation at all. But you want to hear a weird thing? I don't like um I don't like being in a small space together for a long time. For me, my isolation is if no one's in the house. I love it if someone's in the house,
They
but
don't
I
have to
don't
talk to
like
you.
it. I don't
Yeah.
like it if they're in the room with me.
Okay.
I'm, I'm,
So
I'm,
you
I'm,
need their
I'm fucked up,
presence.
bro. I'm fucked up, bro.
No.
He
You
just
need,
doesn't want to be home alone.
No,
yes.
That's
right,
all.
no.
But
So,
go do
so no,
something over
no.
there.
I don't know. It's a little bit of social anxiety,
Okay.
a little bit of social anxiety, coupled with like, like the fear of isolation or the fear of loneliness,
Yes.
right? So, if let me tell you, because I talk about this with my girl a lot. Like, if a lot of people come over, and it doesn't matter if it's strangers or friends or even family.
Mhm.
At some point, if we're all in the living room watching TV, talking, dining table, I have to get up and go to my room upstairs and hang out there for about 10, 15 minutes by myself because I feel like I start to get a little bit of stress and anxiety being around so many people in one, or just people in one area. I
Yeah.
got to get out of that area, and then when I go into an area by myself, I feel like I can breathe
You can
and there's
reset.
and reset, and no one's judging me. I
Got you.
don't know. I don't know, but I know for a
I
hundred.
promise you, there are going to
I know
be
100%,
100
Bailey.
people who are going to hear exactly what you said and be like, I completely get it.
Yeah, yeah. And after a while, if there's a lot of people, after a while, in my head, I'm like, it's time for y'all to go. Like it's time to go. Like I'm getting stressed. I need my space. I'm stressed right now.
I
You know
will
what I
I will
mean?
say, Robert, as long as I've known you, you're really excellent at not making the people in the room
Feel
feel
that
that
way,
way. Yes,
right?
because I'm analyzing so many weekends at your house in front of all the football screens, and never one time did I ever feel like you really, I'm trying to be like, did he walk out the room? I'm like, did he make us go home? Never. I'm like, no, you were always so great and accommodating. And if you were anxious and stressed in silence, I apologize for
I'm a
ever
no, I'm a
putting you in that
great I'm a
space.
great host, but if you really really pay attention, periodically you'll see me disappear.
That's what I'm running through all these days in my head, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Periodically I will disappear because I just can't. I can't. And again, it's the way I was brought up. Like Omar said, like weren't my parents aren't like the huggy I love you types. Nah, none of that. It's straight like do this, you got chores, you got school, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to send you to the States, whatever the case may be. But it was never,
Yeah.
and so I grew up that way where I did a lot for myself,
Hmm.
right? But, and then having coaches be the ones to really raise me. Like, it's
Yeah,
like being raised by, it's like a sheep being raised by wolves. After a while, the sheep is going to think it's a wolf.
yeah, for
You
sure.
got me? It's going to act like a wolf.
For
Not
sure.
saying that, not saying I was a sheep, but I'm saying I was raised by these coaches who were absolute animals, beasts towards us as little kids, trying to make us tough.
Tough. Hmm.
And they
Right.
did.
And
They created a
everything,
two-time Super Bowl champion, two-time national champion,
a
president
hundred,
of
a
Rosenau
hundred,
Sports, like ESPY award winner,
a
Guinness Book
hundred
of World
percent.
Records.
But
Like,
100%. That was created. I wasn't born like that. Trust me, the coaches got that out of me and turned me into that. But look what it's done to my life after football's over and I'm retired. Like,
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? Like I
Great
have to
skill.
have some sort of competition. And if I don't have competition and it goes for a week plus isolation if no one's here, I'm a mess.
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
mess. I got like I'm calling my hey
You got to
Everest
play
come
something.
by. I'm calling friends. I'm going to what you doing. I'm coming. You know what I mean? Like I'm a mess.
Yeah.
So it's just and I realized that about myself. And I'm 56 years old. I didn't know that when I was 50. I didn't know that in my 40s. I didn't know that in my 30s. So ultimately, I didn't know what my trauma was. And I didn't know therapy was even an option because no one talked about it.
Nope.
look at how far ahead you are, Omar. Like you're 48 years old, talking to a 56-year-old person. Like
Omar, you're away, but
passing,
right. But
we're
Omar's
passing it
younger.
down. Yes, because
He's
they're
younger
getting it
than me,
earlier.
but
Yeah.
he's also younger than me in the space or in this time where mental health is being talked
Yes.
about. So
Yes.
the tools are being taught to him
Yes.
earlier because that's just his age, and for me later because this is just my age.
No,
We
correct.
have to talk about it to the 20-year-olds. And
Yeah.
especially I love it now in the athlete space. I don't think they feel comfortable exactly going to the team clinician or the team psychologist or the
Right.
team pastor. I don't think they 100% feel comfortable because I think they still feel like certain elements of that is coming back to the team. However, I commend these leagues for putting it in those spaces because I know, especially as a media member, you don't think I've dealt with hundreds of athletes. I can't name you one that isn't mentally going through something. I remember Frank Gore, and
Oh, that was going to be my question.
I
Go
remember
ahead.
Frank Gore when I believe Frank Gore was one of your clients.
Yep.
And I knew Frank Gore. I wrote the first story of him from his freshman year in high school. Two ACL tears. But what people didn't realize is his mama was on dialysis.
Yep.
The money that he was making from the University of Miami was supporting the whole family along with welfare.
Yep.
And they all lived in a house that is smaller than my actual bedroom, a whole
Yep.
house
That's trauma. That's a lot of trauma.
that was smaller than my bedroom. And he was effectively going through all this and pushing himself because he needed to get them out of there. And you don't think that's trauma?
Yeah.
That's trauma and that mental anguish and the what players mentally go through fighting back from an ACL tear and an Achilles tear, or the fact that this team just drafted my replacement, or are they going to pay me and get me to that fourth contract? Am I going to create generational wealth? Oh my God, I'm struggling. I'm a second round pick and I haven't been good. And, everybody says it's this or it's that. And how much of it is me? And am I mentally soft? You can't even imagine how many players that I have dealt with where you see them mentally going through these things.
Right.
From drug players who are addicted to smoking marijuana because it's the coping mechanism, or alcoholism. And Rob, y'all have had hundreds of clients, and many of them deal with or use those things to cope. Everybody goes through something, and professional sports is the highest of the high. And what they have to deal with, people don't realize this is serious business. It's for a football team. I put it's 53 different franchises. You might see one team, but it's 53 different franchises, and all of those franchises, they got their own GMs and they got the mother and they got, that comes with a lot of stress.
Yeah. I
On a
think
20-year old.
to just, jump on to what you said earlier. I think every athlete has some sort of trauma. In order to become a professional athlete, you go through it, right? Because you're going to go through many, many different coaches with different coaching styles, many wins and losses on a daily practice field, fights on the football field, dealing with your family, guys who did not make it to the NFL who put all their eggs in one basket that they were going to make it, and now they didn't make it. All these different areas. That's why I think the NFL should do more. I think therapists should be in the building.
Yeah.
I think guys should talk to therapists weekly,
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
I think therapists in the building would be able to that become familiar with each person on the team would be able to over time say, this guy over here needs a lot more help. This guy maybe not as much. And then I think once you do that and you understand the dynamic of each athlete, I think you'll have more control over that person going through domestic violence at home or getting in trouble with the police. Or I think teams need to do more of that because they try to do these interviews, Bailey, where they go through this interview process before the draft and they're trying to profile a guy so to determine whether this guy will fit on the team. Should they draft this guy or is he going to be a mess? I mean, it's really them being an evaluator on a player's mental health. And when they come to the conclusion that, listen, I am not drafting this kid, in my mind, Like that's a kid that needs therapy.
Yeah.
That you think his character, he has so many flaws that you won't draft him, but some other team's gonna draft him. That kid's walking into some building and no one has identified. Let's get therapy for this kid. Let's get therapy for that kid. Let's. They're still good football players, but if you want to have a player play for a long time and not have the off the field issues affect the team's chances of winning and that kid's career, I think they need to have more therapists in the building to help the guys weekly.
I
I
think he
don't disagree
basically
with you.
just said, sorry, Omar. I think he basically just said that all corporations basically need this system because
Yeah.
you've probably, Robert, never interviewed for a regular corporate job. Like this is the same. Like the same people are applying for corporate positions and going to work at jobs every day with people they can't freaking stand, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
Yeah, and so this is not just NFL and sports, but it's like literally like you're basically saying that every organization needs to have a therapist on hand for their employees because basically
No, I disagree because
why?
sports is different. Sports, there's
They
wins and losses every day in
There's
practice.
wins and
From
losses every day in corporate America
yeah,
too.
but you don't enter corporate America until you finish college. But as an athlete, you're doing sports as a little kid.
Yeah, but what about all the people that didn't? I've been working a job since I was 13 years old.
Yeah, 13. Yeah, but not everybody works a job at 13 years old. My kids didn't have a job. They're in college. There are
Well,
kids out there there are kids out there that
you
own.
had an NFL career though, so your kids didn't have to
No,
work a
but
job at
my
13.
point is some kids go through jobs for summer, but they don't really have a career until they leave college. My point is
I understand.
these these athletes as kids, as 9, 10 year olds in Little League are being slapped around and screamed at. You did this wrong, you did that wrong. You think that's not
No,
damaging that
I
kid's
think that
psyche?
that's where their parents should step in. I think that's where they have therapists
they
at
have
home.
to
They
have
have a mother or a
Yeah,
father
you
or
gotta have
both,
them and you
but
gotta
they
gotta have
should.
them, and they got to know what's going on.
and then
Exactly.
the
And
coach gonna
Omar,
say, "Hey, your mom's always in the way. Your dad, and then they gonna want you on the team,
I
and then
have
you gonna
covered
tell your mom,
teams where I
"Mom,
have
stop
covered
coming to
teams
practice."
where they basically have shunned the player, no matter how good he was, because he had a helicopter father.
Right.
but
I
this is
agree.
And
ridiculous. We're talking about kids at this point. And Omar, before I forget, because I wrote this down from 10 minutes ago that I do not want to forget, because I think it's a crucial thing for a dad raising a 4-year-old daughter. Your 4-year-old's a daughter, right?
yes,
Okay, so you already have a 23-year-old son where you said you feel like it's a little too late to start hugging him. But you've started
no, but I
well,
go ahead. Yeah,
but you see what I'm saying? Like you're just realizing that you should be like implementing more physical touch. So with your daughter, right? Because it's crucial that she gets it from her dad. Otherwise, she's out in these streets later on getting it from some rando, and the first rando that shows her the physical touch is going to be like a magnet for her, and you
yeah,
don't want that. But the thing that I've identified with people who didn't grow up with physical touch is that when they finally meet somebody who is touchy-feely, they're awkward because they don't know where to insert it or when. So what you have to display instead of waiting for her to come to you for the physical touch or the cuddles is you have to show her when it's time to cuddle. You have to show her when the hugs should happen. You have to show her when it's time to hold your hand. So if you start doing it, it creates a marker for that person because I've had to show somebody how to do certain things like this. And I learned that it was only because they just felt awkward and didn't know when or where to insert it without risking being rejected.
okay, yeah, no, definitely. I take my daughter on daddy-daughter dates. We yesterday we went to the store. She was with her grandparents, and she well behaved. And I said, I'm gonna buy you a toy and you get to pick the toy. And we went to the mall and we were looking, you get whatever toy you want, and that's your day, that's your thing to do.
That's
So
great.
and I like the process of her like figuring out what she wants, and figuring out, okay, this is the one thing that I want. I'm gonna go to different stores. I'm gonna leave this store and check out another store and then come back to this store. I love that, and it's about teaching her life skills. But you're right. Like even yesterday, I was just like, okay, hold daddy's hand. Like make sure you hold daddy's hand. And you're right. It's okay to hold my hand. I don't want you just randomly walking around. Just hold my hand.
Yeah, but like also telling her you want to hold her hand is the thing. Like, I'd like to hold your hand. Like,
Yes.
then she's
Okay.
like, oh, you want to hold my hand? Not just that she has to hold your hand because you say so, but just the fact that no, daddy likes holding your hand. I want to hold your hand. And so it's like how you present it, because I know you'll get it right away, is how you flip the perspective on the
Okay.
recipient is where you get like a lot more of the buy-in for it later on. And then they learn it themselves.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. I just had to share that with you because I thought
No,
that
I thank you. I appreciate that. That's
I'm
knowledge.
I'm in your circle. I'm in your circle,
Yeah.
Omar.
Yes.
So
This is a
Omar,
safe space.
we talked about um, you personally, and your space. You've been in this space for 25 years as in the sports space, and you know, when it comes to, I just want to go back a little bit. Do you think COVID played a tremendous part in the forward learning of mental health for people? Do you think COVID really allowed people to look at themselves in the mirror? Because I think there was a lot of different people that talked about their mental health after COVID.
Oh man. I think COVID jacked up the generation of kids that were in school, had to homeschool, the isolation that it created. That I heard Cameron say something on his podcast the other day. He was talking about relationships, and he was like, in COVID, like you had to pick somebody. You couldn't like switch it up. Like you had
Right.
to like that. That's just what I had to pick. And I was in my relationship with that person because it was COVID. And I think COVID did so much damage to all of society, but did it make us more aware of mental health and our issues? Maybe. Um, I I think I think what's helping us now, and it's crazy to say, is the amount of podcasts and space and Instagram and social media where everywhere you turn there's somebody giving you
Information.
advice. There's information and it's not all healthy. Like I just watched something today. You know how everything you can watch the news and one day they'll tell you coffee's good for you. One next day they'll tell you coffee's bad for you. And I watched something today on social media that was just like, don't drink ice water. If you drink ice water, it's
Yeah.
gonna do this and this and this and this. And then funny because
Drink room temperature water.
yeah, drink room temperature. And if you do this, and then I had to go and look, and it's funny because I looked at now you could see, and this is the Meta or whatever, or what do we call it? Um
Facebook,
the, the the computer. I forget what we were talking about it.
Chat.
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. I don't think it's not everything is not ChatGPT, but that's like a Kleenex.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you're looking at Twitter's version of ChatGPT. Somebody says, "Is this accurate?" And then it breaks it down. And that's the thing now. Everything's got its own version of ChatGPT. It's got its own version. Instagram has one. X has one. Facebook has one. And I've heard three different brands of different chat GBTs, information, AI information. These things are so resourceful and they're helpful. So I do understand why people can lean on it now. When I tell you I have friends who will talk to chat GBT before they talk to another friend.
Right.
And I'm not personally doing it, but I definitely can tell you I know a handful of people who are, which is and is it the right thing? I don't know, but they're going based on a lot of clinician information. So
Right.
Well, COVID threw a lot of people into isolation though as well.
Yeah.
If a
yes,
lot of people struggle with isolation, I
Yeah.
can see how the mental health issues for them would have then bubbled up to the surface because it forced
Exactly.
people who couldn't leave the house to then have to talk. You either had to talk on the phone if you were shut
Yeah.
by yourself, or you had to talk on FaceTime. We did a lot of Zoom. So people started doing a lot more talking, and we started finding out what more people were struggling with, because I think a lot more people felt safe saying that they have mental health issues post COVID, because COVID was like the scapegoat.
Right. Well, when Omar said, mentioned his isolation, the first thing came to my mind was COVID, and I thought, Omar, did you come out of COVID, with more issues, like mentally saying, man, that was rough, or did you already have the tools and you said, hey, you know what, I can handle this, just being in the space, like you say, you don't like being isolated, just being at
Yeah,
home.
I wasn't isolated during COVID, but I could definitely understand. I'm such a worry about other people. Um, I wasn't necessarily worried about myself, and that's another thing that I gotta dissect, and I would rather do for other people or stress about other people than stress about myself, and
Right.
that's something that I actually have to change. Um, but yeah, COVID wasn't that challenging to me, but I did see the effects that it had on family members, friends, saw the effect that it had on my father, forced him into retirement, just because he saw peers, people his age, dying. And
Right.
he's like, yeah, I'm not, why am I working? I don't need to work.
Right.
Like,
I'm done.
I'm done. I would rather, and now my father, sits in his garage, not because he has anything to do in there. He just sits in his garage and watches people go by in the neighborhood, and it's just what he does.
Right.
So yeah, it's COVID challenged everybody, I think. And but you're right, it possibly made a lot of us more aware of the things that we were battling with. And I think we all have a journey. Like I'm educated on my mental space, but I'm still learning about things. When I say I learned about attachment styles, I learned about it in February. And I'm not even at the space where I'm comfortable enough. What you read, Bailey, accurately explained me, but I can't really explain it to you. You understand?
Right.
Because I'm like, I'm reading things and I'm like, yes, 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 that's me, yes. And sometimes you read things and you realize it's not you, but if you go a little bit further, you'll find that there's a deviation of this, that, and the other. So yeah, it's about growth, and I also don't think we I don't think there's ever a finish line. Like I heard somebody say something about relationships going 7-year cycles. And I was like, oh man, I gotta look this up. And then I saw that there is some truth to that where relationships go in 7-year cycles because 7 years is like a life change.
Right.
And whoever you marry or whoever you're with or whoever you're dating, they could potentially be somebody completely different. And
In 7. Yeah.
if you don't take the time, and your children could be my son at 17 could be somebody completely different than my son at 24. You have to take the time to get to know that person and be accepting of that change and accepting of that growth.
Yeah.
Like, and then you have to kind of grow with them. So like
Well,
that's where the idea of the 7-year itch comes from, that a lot of relationships or marriages fail around the 7-year mark because of that transformation. And I think it's really based because of the lack of investment early on in the relationship. Like personally, I've been a wedding planner since 2007. So I think premarital counseling, the way it's designed, is a complete joke. It doesn't actually provide them any tools and the actual type of difficulties and the level at which those difficulties can get to. It doesn't
Right.
actually run you through
Right.
those scenarios. And you
They,
should
they,
be doing,
Bailey, they may be scared to do that because the marriage won't happen.
well, but it shouldn't. No, but that's accurate. Then it shouldn't happen,
Then it shouldn't
because then
happen.
obviously it saves you from the trauma of divorce, because I've been
Right.
divorced a couple of times, and divorce is a very traumatizing experience. And had I done premarital counseling, the length of, like, you really need to spend time with a person. You really do. And I know it's against biblical and religion to like live with somebody, but you really don't know who that person is unless you
Right.
live with them first for like at least 2 years. Like 2 years is like, because I was living with my partner for 2 years, and then we went into COVID, which for our household was amazing because it was the first time in my life I'd ever gotten a break from work because the events industry was the first to close and last to open. So I was not allowed to work. So I had to
Right.
find projects. So I just spent time finding projects for all our 5 kids. Like today we're going to paint. Tomorrow we're going to learn piano. Now we're going to learn French. Oh, we're going to put on a show. Like it was just a constant, and everyone got to spend time together. And that's what we really took advantage of in our house. But I can see how other people struggled with the COVID issue because it was a difficult thing for a lot of people, but I just took advantage of the time because I had never been home for my kids. I've always been working Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, sometimes Thursday night. Like I'm away on the weekend. So it was a crazy thing, but I think that is really like, what were you going to ask me, Robert?
I was just gonna say, you know what? I realized that all three of us have been divorced twice, right? And as Omar said, he's not looking for that third marriage, right?
Mm.
I'm
Yeah,
with someone. I'm with someone, but I'm not. You know, we've been partners now for years. Bailey is in the same boat. We're all, and
Seven
it's
years
like,
on the 19th
the-
of June, seven
yeah.
years.
So divorce, yeah, divorce in itself has been traumatizing
yeah.
to us as a group. You know, and maybe, I don't know, maybe that's the next podcast, is how divorce affects people. Because yeah, people get trauma, comes in
It's
so many different ways and from so many different sources.
yes, it's the death of a relationship.
Yeah,
And you know, you just like any death, you mourn
you
that.
mourn it. Yeah,
You mourn it.
you
And
go through grief and everything.
yep, all the stages of it.
And
So
you don't want to put yourself in that position to go through that mourning and grief again. So you like, wait a second, yeah, we'll be partners, but I don't, we not getting
But
married
that's
because
the wrong thought process, because then what happens is, like, this is how I look at it, is then the old partner wins because the old partner still has control of your new life and how
right.
you move forward,
So
because the
crazy
old
how
partner
that, you're
is
so
like,
right, Bailey. You're
it's
so
it
right.
right, and then you're holding the sins of the old partner against the new person. And what's really crucial in a relationship these days, you asked me a question earlier, Robert, is transparency is the key to all things. If you're in that space where you want to be in a long-term relationship honestly until the day you die with one person, then
yeah,
you want to go in exactly how you want the other person to operate. So then you tell them like it is, you share everything, you be your raw, ugly self every single day and all of the time. And you
Right.
expect that from the other person, because then you find out faster whether or not the two of you are even supposed to be connected.
that's
Right.
true.
Just get rid of it. So like
And
it's like an interview for a new CEO of your company, right? You've
Right.
invested all this money into your company and you're interviewing a CEO to come in and run alongside you. And who are you going to trust with the whole organization? Who? You ask all the right questions, you do the background checks, you follow up on them,
but
you
you
do
still don't
meetings.
know until that CEO finally takes over. Were they putting on
Right.
airs or
But
Did they have a mask on the whole
people
time?
can only lie about who they really are for like 90 days before they
no,
know
no,
who
no.
they
Oh,
I
are.
no, I
totally disagree
disagree.
with
Come
you.
I
on.
disagree.
No, I think
90
you guys
days.
were just not paying
90
attention.
days.
No, no, we were paying attention. You're right. And we talk about, and this is
See,
some we talk about this all the time. You saw the signs.
Yeah.
You just ran through the red light,
Yeah.
thinking that that person could change, would change, would,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
and
Yeah.
that's the
also women.
problem. You
Ran right
said
through
you
that red
went
Sometimes
light.
through.
women think, yes, sometimes women think that I'm going to change him. I can honestly say I never went into the situation thinking I'm going to change her. Because I learned that from my first marriage. You're not going to change that person that you're with. What I thought was experience, life, age, parenting would mature them. Sometimes it doesn't happen.
Right.
Sometimes it just doesn't happen.
Right.
And then
Yes, but when you run through a red light, you know that you broke the law and you should get a ticket. That is two red flags.
Right.
But what happened to you when you run through a red light and nothing happens? You're like, maybe
Well, you forget. You think you just got away with it,
You,
and that's
you
not.
got you think
Yeah,
you got away with it, but it catches up to you later because they got the camera, the red light camera.
they send you the ticket in the mail. It is like $1,000.
And I will tell
Like
you to
camera
just go
that.
fight it in court. And it's
You win or lose. You don't know in court. Sometimes you win,
yeah,
sometimes you
most of
lose.
the time you win in court. If you go to the lengths and
Yeah,
the officer
yeah,
doesn't even show up, they'll throw
yeah,
the case out. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
Listen, there
That's
have been
all part of life.
so many CEOs of companies along the way, and it's okay to fire the CEO and find a new one.
That's crazy,
yeah,
man.
okay.
I
It's
know,
crazy.
Robert, you said we've all been married and divorced twice on this podcast, but I can't get off this podcast a liar because I know for a fact I've been married and divorced 3 times and I'm on
Yeah,
husband.
3 times.
Yeah, and I'm on
Three
husband
times?
and I'm on because listen, I am not afraid to fire the CEO. I am not afraid to say, hey, this is wrong. And I'm going to
But
give you the
what red light did you
opportunity.
learn what red lights you ran the first time, or did the people change?
Oh, so I learned the red flags. I had to learn them. Like as a young person, like I got married really young the first time. I was like 19 or 20. It lasted 6 months. He slept with his high school girlfriend and got her pregnant. And I didn't even know. But then he told me when he found out she was pregnant. So immediately I just said, I'm done. I walked on that one. I was like, go raise the baby with her. We don't even need to talk about this. You did what you did. She's pregnant. Go see if you could make a family with that woman. So that was a wash, right? The
Right.
second time, he was constantly telling me something and I was buying into it. So because I didn't know the environment, I'd moved here from Canada to be with a man in the US and I didn't have any friends or any additional input. And plus I wasn't used to this American way. And so I was very naive. So I didn't know everything I was being told was a lie. So when I found out, I tried to fix it because we were already one kid in. And then at the end of it, it never got fixed. It actually got way worse. And so there were multiples that I was cheated on with that I found out about, which is threatening to my life. And then, it just, you learn the red flags and you do ignore them. But like at the end of the day, when you figure out what your own core values were, and I have to say that this did not happen until I was like 38, 39, 40, where I
Yeah.
started to realize what my core values were and then was willing to be non-negotiable just to be with a partner because you didn't want to be alone. You don't want to be single, and I didn't want to be a single mom.
I wish high school would have taught me all the signs and this, I wish there was a class that said, listen, ask these questions. If they give you these answers, turn and run. Like take a test, you ask a question,
But
is it
that's
A or
accurate,
B?
Robert.
You know what I
No,
mean?
that's
Like
accurate. You don't learn any
you
relationship
learn it through the
skills
relationship. You learn as you go, and by then I crashed into 2 walls.
unless you've learned them from watching the two people who were parenting you and how they
Yeah.
parented you. They were either
Exactly.
present
But
or they were not present, or
right.
if
But
someone
then
was
but then
unhappy,
they're
watched
bringing.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
they're
right,
bringing all
baby.
their traumas.
They're
No
bringing their
one's
traumas.
teaching them that. No one's talking to them about what it should look like. What does love really look like? No one's talking to that group, which really we should probably be talking to them about 13, 14 years old, where they start feeling themselves and getting their little hormones together. And like, so they can identify what's right and what's a red flag, what's a
Yeah.
green flag, I also think the problem was I also didn't really know who I was. And I
Yes.
really think I didn't start feeling like I was learning who I was as a person till 35.
But also, you change. We all change. So your person that you were at 18 probably was not anywhere close to the person that you were at 35, just because of life experiences and things that you've gone through. And hopefully, and not all of it is going to be damaged. Not all of it is going to be bad and negative. It's just you learned and you figured out what you liked, what you wanted, and sometimes it's okay that that changes.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Omar, you've been great to talk to, man.
Yeah, man.
Omar, we're over the limit like by 15 minutes. I could keep talking to you for another hour, man. You're
Yeah.
absolutely
But,
awesome,
but
dude.
I think this is important because and that's one of the things that I'm trying to do now is create more podcasts and create more spaces where, I'm from the I Am Athlete background, and while it doesn't exist now, that was a space where people talked about mental health. People talked about their feelings, emotions, things that they've gone through, dating experience, life experience, and business. And I think the more that people talk, the more that you realize and you learn that, hey, you're not alone. And I feel that. And this is my experience. I remember we connected about your daughter and
Yeah.
learning about that. And it made me feel like I'm not alone with what I'm going through with my son. And those are things that are absolutely important.
Yeah.
Well, Omar,
100%.
before we wrap today, I just want to let you know the things that make me happy are horseback riding, singing, and finding a project to be creative and build something. So, can you share with our listeners and our viewers what top 3 things make you happy before we sign off for the day?
Top 3 things that make me happy is I know I'm an extrovert, so I know I like being around outside. I like being around people. I like being outside. So I don't have to go to something but I have friends who every week. They're extroverts too, and they find events, and we'll go to events. It doesn't even have to be a great event. I just like going and doing things. I love. I had a convertible. I have a scooter. I love moving and feeling wind in my hair.
Right.
Wind just coming at me. That absolutely makes me happy. And doing things for people. Um, I would rather do something for you than do something for me. That's going to make me happy. Um, and I use it as an avoidance, according to my therapist, is to not do take care of me. I would rather take care of you than I take care of me. And
Right.
I need to learn that, hey, you have to come first. So, and that's my journey for 2025. I have to come before everybody. It's like, as they say, put on your own life vests before you put on the life vest of somebody else.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for being with us today, Omar. Listeners, you heard it here first. Self-care is important. Put yourself first. You can't take care of anybody else if you haven't taken care of yourself. And of course, if you know somebody that is struggling and does need assistance, please have them dial 988. Of course, in an emergency, dial 911. And if you need additional resources, please visit kennedykids.org and visit our mental health resource page. We appreciate you today for being on our show.
I made it
Omar,
through the
thank you so
rough
much.
time.
Thank you, Omar. Omar
I made
Kelly.
it through the tough
Thank you,
time.
guys.
Tough time. I made it through the bad time. Bad time.